Hi, my name is Mandy Blackburn, and my paper is on the subsistence lifestyles of Alaskan Natives, beginning with defining what subsistence is, and then moving into what specifically makes up Alaskan subsistence lifestyles, specifically Alaskan Native subsistence lifestyles. After we establish that, we'll move into how colonization has changed that lifestyle and how different tools and techniques have been brought in that have altered how Alaskan Natives go about their traditional subsistence activities. From there, we'll move into how rules and regulations have limited the actions of Alaskan Natives and have limited their ability to actually perform their subsistence traditions and activities. And from there, I'll go into a little bit of basic information about what modern civilization and how city life has affected Alaskan Natives and their subsistence activities and their traditional lifestyles, and overall how that's changed Alaskan life. So starting with what is subsistence. Subsistence is defined by Merriam-Webster as the minimum as of food and shelter necessary to support life, or a source or means of obtaining the necessities of life. Specifically for the Alaskan Native population, this means hunting and gathering from animals and plants and other resources, food and shelter and clothing from the local area. This means everything from seal hunting out on the ice to moose and caribou hunting to gathering berries and grass for different food and storage options. They often used as much of the animal as they possibly could, and so in the case of seal, they use the hides, and they can use the entrails, including intestines, to help serve some storage purpose. Also, bladders were used for water skins and other means, things that could be reused and thus give more back to the individuals. Since it took so much to bring down an animal of any size, it was necessary to use everything possible from that animal or from that item, be it an animal, a tree, anything along those lines, so that it could be best used and take the least amount of energy when attempting to survive in a harsh climate such as Alaska. Now that we've defined what subsistence is, I can delve into a little bit more what subsistence activities were taking place and still do take place in the Alaskan Native population. These subsistence activities included hunting what we would consider large game animals. These include our typical game animals in Alaska: moose, caribou, Dall sheep. This also includes animals that most white members of the population are not legally allowed to harvest anymore. These can include polar bears, they can include certain species of whales, seals, walruses. Certain species of otters are only able to be harvested by the Alaskan Native population because they are traditional animals to be harvested. In addition to these, what would be considered traditional food sources for the animals, as well as them providing their hides for clothing and shelter, we would also see gathering of berries. These include blueberries, cranberries, they're also known as lingonberries. We see some golden raspberries. Salmon berries are something that's a delicacy for those of us who've had them before. But this also includes gathering of different types of grasses, as seen in the traditional basket weaving. Also gathering eggs from waterfowl that come and roost in the area to raise their young. It also includes sea life, including different types of mollusks and clams, other things that can be found along the shoreline. These all are things that would be considered gathered as opposed to hunted. So we want to expand the idea that gathering only includes plant life. These can provide basic nutrients, especially the eggs can provide a quick source of protein along with the sea life. The grasses and the berries and even some types of tree bark can also provide things like antioxidants and other things that are necessary in the diet that they might not necessarily get through the eating of a very heavily meat-dominant diet. So originally, when people from outside of Alaska began to start to settle in Alaska. Many of them were living the same way as the Alaskan Natives. We had settlers and pioneers who were coming up who were hunting and fishing and gathering for their daily lives. They brought with them some new tools. They had metalwork tools. They brought with them some knowledge of being able to farm and harvest, but with the short growing seasons, there was a minimal ability for that aspect of things to change. However, as more and more people came into Alaska from outside, more additions came. We had firearms that were brought in, and we had different farming techniques, and people learned how to take the short growing season in a majority of Alaska and turn it to their benefit. As these things changed and as more options and more stores and more abilities to have different lifestyles came, more Alaskan Natives were drawn to do something different. So these opportunities and these tools created a new source for them to be able to make a livelihood. Now we've got colleges in Alaska that can take Alaskan Native youth from the community, from a village that may still live in a very much subsistence lifestyle, and give them the opportunity to become doctors and lawyers, and as far as that goes, to even move out of Alaska and have a new life, which is something completely unheard of 50, 60, 70 years ago, or even up until 30, 40 years ago in many areas. These tools and opportunities serve to make life both better and worse in terms of subsistence and traditional living. The tools and the ATVs and the guns and the snow machines all make it easier to hunt and to travel to these areas. They also take money. You have a firearm, you have to have the ability to keep it working, and you have to be able to buy ammunition for it to even work. You have to maintain an ATV, you have to maintain a four-wheeler or a snow machine, you have to buy gas for them to be able to go anywhere. These things mean that you can't just go out on foot or on snowshoe or on a dog sled anymore and just go hunting. If you've got a snow machine or you've got a firearm, you need to be able to have money to buy the things that you need to keep them running. And that's one of the biggest changes, is now figuring out who or how to make the money to use the tools that make hunting so much easier without losing the ability and the time to actually go out and hunt. After Alaska became a state in the Union, there were limitations placed on hunting both by the federal and state governments. Initially, the Alaskan Natives were part of the group that was given a rural preference for hunting and gathering and fishing so they could continue to live as they had for centuries. After much debate, it was determined that this went against the Alaska State Constitution for individual rights, and the state had to rewrite its regulations to allow every citizen of the state of Alaska the same subsistence rights. However, on federal lands, Alaskan Natives are still given a preferential treatment. On state lands, they are now required to follow bag limits and hunting seasons, so they're not free to go out and get an animal when their larder gets low. They are required to go out during specific times and only take what is necessary or what is allowed for the area. So what does this modern lifestyle mean to the Alaskan Natives in Alaska? Alaskan Natives are now using ATVs, snow machines, and rifles to make hunting easier and faster for them, so they are more able to get their traditional foods and clothing options. In addition, there's a blend of modern and traditional in the Alaska Federation of Native conferences that are held in Fairbanks or Anchorage, depending on the year. These blend flea market style events with traditional hides and clothing and different crafts, including baskets and mittens and parkas, that the women usually man stalls in and help to support themselves in cities. It also includes political type conference. Usually the men are upstairs debating political options and trying to figure out how to best go about maintaining their lifestyle in this modern era. We also see a bartering back and forth between the village and the city. There are women and children as well as some men that live in cities, the quote-unquote big cities of Fairbanks and Anchorage and even Juneau and some of the other smaller towns that take the conveniences of modern day life and they barter some of those back and forth between the villages to get their berries or their preferred meat or to be able to get grasses to use baskets to make money. We see that there are some individuals that come in and work all summer for construction companies or to do other seasonal jobs, including tourist positions, in order to then take that money and be able to live a traditional lifestyle for the rest of the year. These are all things that have come about since colonization of the Alaska people has occurred. In conclusion, money makes the modern world go round, but the Alaskan Native peoples have found different ways to continue their traditional lifestyle using a community and barter system. The Native peoples are still fighting to regain their cultural rights to hunt and support themselves as they always have, and this debate will continue for years to come until a compromise is made. The Alaskan Native people will continue to fight the current legislation and the current state of Alaska to get what they deem as their traditional rights. And the state will continue to debate that individual rights, including those outside of the Native population, have just as much right to said subsistence lifestyle as any others. Life changes and adapts as new challenges arise, and the Alaskan Natives are beginning to blend new things with their customary ways in order to survive. In the end, the most conventional definition of subsistence is doing whatever it takes to survive, and the Alaskan Native people will continue to adapt and change in order to do exactly that.